Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now, I love to make tumblers. I love to make sublimation tumblers, I love to make rhinestone tumblers, and I love to engrave on tumblers in a laser. Well, not everyone has a laser. And so I remembered back to about a year ago when it was really popular to do a faux engrave using the Citistrip. I never tried it, and so yesterday I grabbed some of this at Home Depot. I came home and I did a couple of sample engravings on some of my old tumblers that I used to dial in my laser settings. It worked out great. So then my mind thought about what about doing an all-over design on a tumbler using this Citistrip? Well, as I thought about it, as you coat it on, you let it do its magic, you're just going to be getting the Citistrip all over the place. Well, that's when I remembered the old days of when I was in love with epoxy, and I made a tumbler turner. And I realized, I think I realized, I haven't tried it yet, this is my first time, but I realized that this could be a good tool to let this tumbler rotate while this Citistrip is doing its magic. That's what we're going to try today. So the things that I'm going to use, I used a computer and my Cricut Maker to cut out my stencil. I used permanent adhesive vinyl. This is HTV Ront adhesive vinyl. It is permanent, and I think that's pretty important, but you could use any other permanent vinyl that you have, especially those colors that you just don't like and you need to do something with. Those make great stencils. I'll also use the Citistrip. I'm going to clean my tumbler with rubbing alcohol and a paper towel. I'm going to put my Citistrip in this little condiment cup, and then I'll apply it to my tumbler with this little brush. Now this is one of those silicone brushes, so there's no bristles, but I'm going to try to do it with this. I have my tumbler turner, I have some gloves, I have my respirator mask, and I have some eye protection. Now, after I let this sit on my tumbler turner for about an hour, actually probably 50 minutes, then we're going to come up with some more things. We're going to use water, we're going to use an old scrubby towel, and I'll probably use some Barkeep's Friend. That is one of those cleaning agents that's non-abrasive. So if you're interested in seeing how this turns out, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Now, if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing that. If you do, be sure and tap the bell and then click the all notification. That way YouTube lets you know anytime I upload new content. Now, I typically forget to list something in my intro, so something else that I will use is some transfer tape. And then when it's time to check and make sure that the Citistrip has done its job, I'll either use a popsicle stick or a weeding tool. Now, I think that getting the stencil on is going to be the toughest part. But before I do that, let me go ahead and clean my tumbler. I always clean my tumblers regardless of whether I'm doing sublimation, rhinestones, and now faux engraving. All right, let's go ahead and let that dry. Alcohol dries really quickly, and I'm using 91% rubbing alcohol. Now, I will definitely use the weeding tool to weed out my design. And when I'm making stencils, to me, the hardest part is remembering that you're actually weeding out opposite of when you're using adhesive vinyl to make a sign or something like that. Okay, what I want to engrave are the petals of the flowers. So I'll take all of those out. And of course, I'm not going to make you sit through me engraving or weeding out all these petals. Now, the reason they're not coming out as one piece is because I wanted my stencil to be one piece. And so there's no break between the centers and this here. It is thin, but there's no break. I thought that would be easier to put the stencil down if that's the way it was. So I'm going to take out all the petals. And then I put the words flower power up here. So I'm going to take all the letters out. I need to make sure that I leave the centers. So in this one, the center of that O tried to come up. So just watch for things like that. If the wrong part comes up, put your weeding tool on it, lift what you want to remove with your fingers, and that usually works for me. Now, I'm not sure if my thinking was right. Maybe I should have had a gap, and then these would be all by themselves, because these are really, really thin and fragile. These little black pieces right here. But we're going to make it work. Now, let's go ahead and get some transfer tape ready. This is transfer tape that I bought from HTV Ront. I got it on Amazon, and I'm going to put links to a lot of the things that I'm using in the video description. Now I want my transfer tape just a little bit larger than what I'm going to be putting onto the tumbler. Okay, I can see I have some little buckles there. So I want to try to get this loose and straighten that out. When it's been on the roll for a long time, sometimes it does that. So there's a little bit of bubbling right there. So I'm going to pull this back. There we go. And try to lay it back down without bubbling in it. I have some more right here. Now, oftentimes I find it easier to flip transfer tape over and then peel the paper backing off with my fingernail. I'm going to expose one side of it, and I'm going to work to get this put down really flat. And then what I can do is I can pull this paper back and flatten it as I go. I have found that that's the best method for me to use when I'm putting transfer tape on something like a stencil or adhesive vinyl. Now I want to trim off that excess, because before I take this off the backing, I want to make sure it's a good size for this tumbler. I think it is, but I have never used this stencil before. I just made it today. Okay. So I want the bottom of the stencil to go to the bottom of the tumbler and the top of it to go to the top. Now, you might be able to see through there that I can see part of this metal. So I'm going to have to move it down a little bit so none of the metal is showing through my stencil. So let's just start with this flower. I think it's the highest flower. Move it down to the right place. So I might have made my stencil just a little bit too tall. We're going to make it work. So at this point, I'm going to take the backing of the stencil material, the backing of the permanent vinyl, off. And to do that, if you go at a really steep angle, and if you have anything that tries to come up, press your backing back down. So right here, press it back down, rub some more on that, and that did the trick. The main thing is, don't go so fast that if you have issues, it's too late. Don't rip this off and then not be able to fix it correctly. All right, those letters are probably going to be the most difficult part. Awesome. I want to use this top edge to make sure I get it pretty straight. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this transfer tape. It has lines on it, and my lines aren't straight because I didn't put my transfer tape on straight. So I don't want that to get in the way visually. Now I think that I'm going to put down some parchment paper so that it doesn't get really good and stuck until I want it to. Okay, so I'm going to have my template just barely sticking up above my parchment paper. And I think I'm going to have to stand up for this. Okay, I feel like that's kind of straight. You see how it goes around. Okay, that's meeting up together. That's great. I'm going to hold it down and try. I'm going to try really hard to make this a success. And I feel like I might just rip my parchment paper to make that happen. I think that is going to be the easiest method for me. All right, let's go ahead and get this end put down really well. One of my flowers might wrap around the bottom a little bit. I'm going to live with that. I'll peel back so I can get the rest of this parchment paper out. Now I don't want to accidentally let this stick down to the tumbler because I need to make sure that I get it on nice and smooth and straight as I'm laying it down. Okay, it's not exactly even anymore, but that is fine because this is just protecting my tumbler. It's not where my stencil is. Okay, now what I want to do is I really want to rub down with this backing on it to try to make sure that this permanent vinyl is going to be really smooth on my tumbler. Now see, that flower wraps around. I made it just a little bit too tall. It'll still be really cute. I'll just act like I did it on purpose. Like it's artistic to do it that way. And my words aren't quite going to be centered. If I use this design again, I just need to get it a little bit better perfected. All right, so here is where a low tack transfer tape is good. And this is fairly low tack. I mean, it's not super strong. If I had some used that was even less tacky, I'd probably use it. Just like before, I'm going to go at a real steep angle, and as I see things lifting, I'm going to press them back down. Now we're going to talk about the bubbles in your adhesive vinyl here in just a minute, because some of them don't matter and some of them very much matter. So give me a few minutes to get this removed, and I'll be back. That is definitely the hardest part of this project. And I hate that flower power is not centered, but for purposes of this video and this being my tumbler, it's going to be okay. Okay, so I said earlier that some bubbles matter and some bubbles don't. Let me find one that doesn't matter. Okay, I see a couple there. Here's one here. Right here, there's a bubble under this vinyl. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a bubble under there. That doesn't matter because there's not going to be any of the Citistrip working its way under that bubble. Now, on the other hand, I see a bubble by the O and the O here. If I don't push those down and get them smoothed out, I'm going to have a Citistrip going underneath the vinyl, and I won't have a great design. So you see that right there? That bubble cannot stay. So any place you have a lift in the vinyl where the vinyl meets the yellow, those bubbles or those lifts, they have to be fixed. Okay, I think this looks pretty good. If you are doing this, I would say don't have such tedious little details as what I have around these flowers. So the little bitty thin strips of black. Don't do something like that with this Citistrip. Well, we'll see. Maybe it'll turn out okay, but I don't know. Those are pretty little intricate things. Now, I know there are a ton of videos on this process. Well, not quite this process. I didn't see anybody that actually used a tumbler turner and did a full wrap. Maybe there's been somebody that's done that. I didn't see it if there is. But I went back and I watched Jennifer Maker, and I watched The Crafty Brick, and I watched Daily Dose of DIY with Chris. And so those were my inspirations or the instructions that I kind of used to do what I'm doing today. Then also these tumblers that have a rainbow, kind of a holographic paint look underneath the powder cutting. And that's what we'll expose and we'll be able to see. I learned about these tumblers from Patrice at Craftable Things. Okay, I think I'm ready to go ahead and put this on my tumbler turner. Once I have it on the tumbler turner, that's when I'll go ahead and I'll apply the Citistrip. I'm just doing one last inspection to see if I see anything I don't like. This is a tumbler turner that I made, and I actually did a YouTube video making it. So if you're interested in seeing how I did it, it was very inexpensive. Check out that video. I'll have it in the video description, and then I'll have it in the corner of this video at the end of it. So if you want to click on that, you can. So I'm going to take the little football off, and then I want to shove it down into my tumbler. I'm just going to go ahead and put this back on. I'm going to hold right here as I put pressure against it, so I'm not putting pressure against the whole thing. And my football's getting old and kind of ripping a little bit. But that's how we're going to do it. Now, the first time that I used glass etching cream, I had a little piece of it flip up on my face and it landed right by my eyelash. So I always use protective wear when using something that if it got my eye, it'd be really bad. So I'm going to use these glasses. And then I have not done epoxy a lot, but when I did, I always had my little respirator mask on. And so after I get done talking to you, kind of showing you what I'm doing, I'll put this on to finish adding all my Citistrip to this. You want to make sure that your Citistrip is shaken up really well, and it's not going to take a ton, so I'll put a small amount in this cup. I may need more than that, but this is good to get me started. Here's my little silicone brush. These come individually wrapped, which is really nice, and you can actually put it back inside here and keep it clean. So I'm just going to take, I'm definitely going to use more than just that. I'm going to take some of this and dab it all over my stencil where you see yellow. All right, now it's time for the gloves and a bunch of paper towels. All right, let's go ahead and remove this part of the tumbler turner. And while I was tumbling it, it fell off my ball once. So I had to add a little bit more of the Citistrip and just deal with it. So before I put this underwater or use water to clean it, I'm going to go ahead and just wipe off as much of the Citistrip as I can. And you see it's already coming off down there. I should have checked it. I forgot to check it, but I could tell from these areas that it was working. Otherwise, let me show you what I would do. I'd take either a scraper tool or something like this and just kind of scrape on that, and you can see it's coming off. To me, it almost has the texture of like latex paint that's mostly dry. Yeah, look at that. And see right here? Now, on the samples I did last night, I didn't have any just wipe off like that. So I think this took really well. I believe I probably put more on it tonight than I did last night, but I'm not sure. Okay, let me go ahead and get my water up here and I'll show you the next step. All right, so I have this little tub of water, and let's go ahead and take this. Hopefully I can get this football out of here. See, this football is ripped. I think that's why it fell off my tumbler turner. So now I'm just going to take this old rag. You definitely don't want to use something that you're worried about ruining. And we're going to start rubbing on this. Look at that. Now let me show you what I have so far. Where you see yellow, that's actually where the vinyl's coming up. So let's go ahead and take a lot of this off. Then I'm going to go put it under running water, warm water, use something that's a little bit more scrubby, and get the rest of this cleaned off. All right, so I'll show you a sample down here. There's still some that needs to come off. There, that's better. Let me show you what it looks like so far. And of course I still have that vinyl in the middle. There, if you keep working at it, you can get most of the rough patches out. So I'm going to go down into the bathroom, put hot running water over this, keep using my Barkeep's Friend, and I'll be back to show you the final results. I got it all cleaned up, and look at how cute this is. Now, if you've watched me much, you know that if it doesn't turn out just perfect, I'm going to point that out. I don't want to come on here and act like I know how to do it all and everything turns out perfect when it really doesn't. I'm not thrilled with how the word power cleaned up, and I can see I had a little bit of the etching cream that went under the O. So we have that issue. And you can see it seeped under a little bit there. It looks really good, but it is not perfect. This is not as precise as if you're using a laser. So the next video that I do using this Citistrip, I'm going to do what you traditionally see. A design on the front, not an all over, and I'll just use the regular powder coated tumbler. Not one that has this rainbow plate under the powder coating. Now, despite that it's not perfect, if I didn't have a laser to use on tumblers, I would not hesitate in using this process again and again to make some really adorable things. Thanks so much for joining me, and until my next video, bye-bye.